Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this today video, we're gonna work with controllers. But before writing any controller, it's important to understand two middlewares because middlewares act like bridges that connect different part of your backend logic. Right now, I'm inside my main folder and then inside backend and now inside middleware. So you can see we have two files. Clark auth and verification Clark webhooks. So I open up Clark auth. So you can see only very few, two-line codes. So let's start. Let's understand this basic controller, what it does. So yeah, it's basically the way we did our building controller. So this middleware helps protect our routes. Whenever a request comes in, this middleware checks whether the user is authenticated using Clark, and if not, it blocks access. So you don't have to write any extra logic here. Clark handles everything behind the scene. Alright, so it's very simple, right? Now let's move to the next middleware, verify Clark webhooks. So first, if you don't know what a webhook is, imagine it like this. It's a way for two applications to talk to each other automatically. So whenever something happens on one side, let's say on our Clark side, it instantly notifies your server by sending some data. You can think of it like Clark knocking on our server door saying, hey, a new user was created or someone update their profile. That's what a webhook does. It keeps your server and Clark in sync in real time. Now let's understand the code. So at the top we import three things. This is a webhook from SVX. So this is the library, and this is what Clark uses internally to verify webhook request. And this is the .env from .env, and then we call it right, and then we get our Clark webhook secret from. So we already attached. If you see now this one, Clark webhook secret, right? So when you create our Clark, right, so we get it, and yeah, and then we access here, right, and then I add a quick check. If this secret is missing, we throw an error saying missing Clark webhook secret in environment variable, right? Or you can modify your message. And next we define our function. So which is an asynchronous middleware function. Because as you know, async function can take some time to complete, right? So it takes some parameter. In our case, we have three: request, response, next. Inside try block, we first extract the payload from a request.body. So this contains the data Clark sends to us, like details about the user event. Then we grab the headers from the request. Clark always sends three specific headers for security: SVX ID, SVX timestamp, SVX signature. These headers help us verify that the webhook request is truly from Clark and not some random source. Once we have the payload and headers, we create a new instance, right? So this is a new keyword. I think you guys know. And this is a webhook, and this is a web secret. Right. So and then we call WH verify and pass in our payload and headers. If everything matches correctly, that means the request is authenticate, and we get back an event object. Now we attach this. We attach this to the request object, like, and then this way and this way our next middleware or controller can easily access the event data and perform action like creating or updating a user in your database. And finally, we call next to move on to the next middleware. If anything goes wrong, we handle it in the catch block. We log the error message and return 400 and saying invalid webhook signature. Alright. So this is very simplify our Clark auth and very Clark webhooks middleware. Right? It's very simple, and we need, and throughout our writing controller, we are going to use this middleware. All right. So as we have just finished creating and understanding our middlewares, now let's move on to next step, the controller. Right now I'm inside controller. So you can see user controller, search controller, post controller, message controller, and comment controller. So in totals we have a 5 controller. Let's begin with the most important one, the user controller, because let's be honest, everything in social media app revolves around the user. So I'm going to open up, and I did. So at the very top, we have some import. We are importing user model. We're importing delete from Cloudinary, a helper function, and also post model. Don't worry, we'll talk about this function, what it does. But in short, it's used for deleting images or media from Cloudinary. Now inside this file, we have a bunch of controller function, each one handling different user operation. But let's start with the first and most essential one, get current users. The purpose of this function is simple. It fetch all the data for the currently login user. So let's break it down. So this is the asynchronous function. Why? It takes time to complete, and it's always takes parameter. So in our case, there are 2 parameters, request and response. Just and always follow this sequence, otherwise your function won't work properly. Inside the try block, we start by grabbing the Clark user ID, and this user ID is coming from Clark middleware request auth user ID, right? And that gives us the current login user ID, right? This Clark ID. Next, we query our database to find that user. Next, we query our database. This is the user model, and we pass in the Clark ID, and we use find one, right? If a matching user is found, we then select the specific fields we wanna send to the front end. We don't want to send everything, only important data like Clark ID, full name, profile, email, followers, following, and like post, save post, upload post, like whatever data you want, you can select. Now notice that some of these like followers or like post are nested fields that reference other models. To fetch those related documents, we use populate. Right, this way. So what populate does, it replaces those IDs with this actual user or post data. Right. So inside uh, user model, we have this ID. You can only ID. If you don't do this, you can see only ID. But doing this using populate can fetch the actual data. Right. This is the follower and this is the following. So we care about two things, and clerk ID, full name, and profile image. That's it. Now also we have like post, save post, upload post. And here we only care about three fields: caption, media, create at. And then we use len at the end. Why? This convert the result from a mongoose document into a plain JavaScript object, which is faster and easier to work with when sending a JSON response. Right. After fetching the user, we do a quick check. If the user does not exist, we return this message: status code 404 is not found, as a message, as a JSON message. And finally, if everything goes well, we send the user data back to frontend. And finally, inside catch block, we handle any potential error. We log them in console for debugging. Right. So this is for debugging purpose. And also we send 500 response and message internal server error. And that's basically it. That's how the get current controller works. Right, step by step. Right. So this is the basic, and yeah. Alright. Now let's move on to our next controller, get wall users. This one's much simpler than the last one, but it's still really important. The goal here is to fetch all the users available in our database and send that data back to the frontend, basically to show list of all users. So let's walk you through how it works step by step. And once again, this is an asynchronous function because it has to communicate with the database, and that always takes some time. And just like before, we are passing two parameters: request for the request that comes from the frontend, and res for the response we will send back. Inside try block, we write a very simple MongoDB query. We use find method. There is no filter, just find, but we sort it. So now what's happening here? Right. So we're just fetching every single user in the database because we are not filtering, right? And then we just sort it and create at -1. So that -1 basically means descending order. The most recently create users come at the top. Once you get the data, we send it back to the frontend like this: response.status to 00.json users. Even you can put a message like I did before in my previous controller, right? You can organize the way you want to, and that's it. We have successfully fetched all the users and send them to the client, right? And of course, we wrap it up we wrap it all in a catch block to handle any errors that might occur. You can see this is a console error, and this is a response, right? So, and fail to fetch user. Super clean, right? Super clean and super straightforward. And this is get all users. And now let's talk about the next one. Toggle follow, right? So the idea here is simple. When you hit the follow button on someone's profile, you start following them. But if you tap it again, it flips back, meaning you have unfollowed that person. So it's basically one button doing two jobs, just like other toggle button, maybe like button or maybe a save button, right? So let's see how this logic actually works behind the scene. First off, this is an asynchronous function because it has to communicate database. That's why asynchronous function, right? At the top, at the very top, you can see inside try block, at the very top, we are just destructuring user ID from request.params, which comes from our route. That's the ID of the user we want to follow or unfollow. This is the ID. This is the user ID we want to follow or unfollow. And then we grab clerk ID from our clerk middleware. This the same we did for our previous controller. All right. Remember, only login users can perform this action. Most platforms let you view content without an account, but to interact, like follow, post, or comment, you have to be authenticated, right? Next, we find current user. This is the current user using clerk ID. We are using MongoDB find on method, right? And we are query inside user document. This is the user model, right? And if current user doesn't exist, we immediately return a 404 response with user not found message. And now here's crucial checkpoint. We need to make sure a user can't follow themselves. That's why we are preventing ourselves to follow our account, right? So we just check if the current user ID is equal to the user ID we are trying to follow. If they are same, that means this block run, and with this message you cannot follow yourself, right? And next one, we find the target users, the person we are about to follow or unfollow. If that user does not exist, we again return a 404 message, target user not found. Once we have both users, we initialize a variable called isFollowing. And then we check whether the current user is already following the current user, right? Inside the user model, we have a field called following, right? This is the field we have inside our user model. And this current user we define here, right? But this current user is me. Suppose this is my account, so me, right? This is current users. And this is the following field from that current users. And this is the include method. And this is the user ID, the person I'm about to follow or unfollow. So here I'm checking. Basically because following is a array of user ID, the person I follow, right? So if that's true, if this expression true, it means we are already following them. So the new click means unfollow, right? So that means if you click again that button, so now you're going to unfollow, right? So in that case, we use MongoDB's pull operator to remove the user ID from both sides of the relationship, right? And if you look at, we are using promise all, and this is an array. This is an array, and we have two objects. So this is the first one, find by ID and update, and just we are removing the target user. Just remove the target user from the current user following array, right? So this is the target user. And then second one, remove the current user from the target user's followers array. And then we run these two updates simultaneously using promise all. So they execute in parallel instead of waiting for each other. That keeps the operation fast and efficient. Then we set each following false, because at first we initialize as nothing, right? So now we make it false. So if it's true, then run this block of code. But if it's false, this expression, which means this block of code gonna run, right? So if user wasn't already following, we do the opposite, the follow part, right? The follow part. So we use MongoDB add to set operator, right? If you look at, this is the MongoDB add to set operator, which adds a value only if it doesn't already exist. So we avoid duplicates. We add the target user, right, to the current user's following field, and add the current user to the target user followers list, right? Then we set is following true, and once follow and unfollow operation is complete, we fetch the update user. Right? So and then like we fetch the update user data to send back to the front end. So we find the user by user ID this way, and find by user ID, right? And select only the fields we care about. So in our case, I care about full name, profile image, followers, and following. And as we talk about, when we have nested document, that means this select gonna provide only IDs, but we do care about the actual data. So that's why we need populate, and populate using followers. I care about full name, profile image, and also following full name, profile image, right? So finally we send our response, and of course we wrap, right? And this also this is the dynamic message. It's depending on this following field. If it's true, so; if it's false, so. And this is a flag. So it's a Boolean flag, and this is a user data. And of course we wrap everything in a catch block to handle any unexpected error this way. So this is a console log for debugging purpose, and this is a message 500 message false, message failed to toggle follow, and that's it. This controller brings your social logic to life, right? The button instantly switches between follow and unfollow, right? And everything stays perfect sync between users. And now let's talk about our last middleware handle Clark webhook. So we already create the verify Clark webhook web middleware, right? Earlier, that one's job was to make sure that request actually came from Clark by verifying the signature and decoding the payload. Now this function handle Clark webhook is where actually respond to the data. In other words, this is where we handle whatever Clark is telling us, whether user just sign off, update their profile, or delete their account. So right at the start, we grab the event that we attached earlier inside our verification middleware. That's request.event, right? And then we simplify destructuring it this way: type data. Now type tell us what kind of event happened. For example, user.create. For example, user.create when a new user signs off, and maybe it could be user.update when a user updates their info, and maybe user.delete when a user deletes their account. And the data holds all the information about that user, like their ID first, last email. So for that, this way you can get that event, right? This is the type, and now I just put user create, and this is the data. We have ID, we have first name, last name, and email address. Just notice this email address is an array, because Clark allows us to add primary and secondary. So we only care about here primary, right? So that's why, and also username and email URL. This data we can get, and here just we are restructuring, right? And so that's and now let's look at what happens when the event type is user create, right? Because we are going to handle 3 types. So let's understand first user.create. So if type is this, then run this block of code, right? So we grab a Clark ID, data.id, and then we are just querying by passing Clark ID, and we are using find one if it exists. So so we are assigning here, and so if the user does not exist, then run this block of code, which means somehow Clark sent the response. Okay, so here I'm checking if there is no user already exists, then create a new brand user. So that's why new instance, and then all the field that field match with our MongoDB, right? And so this is the constant, like new users, and this field we care about Clark ID, full name. And here if you look at full name, means the Clark have first name and last name. So here we are just grabbing data first name, and then we are checking first name and last name. Otherwise trim it, or otherwise make it anonymous. And also we care email, profile image, and users. This user ID you can use, or you can skip, because I'm not gonna use it. But for your case, you can use it, and then save that new users, right? And that's it. Like the moment user signs off through Clark sends a webhook to our backend. We verify it and instantly create a matching record in your MongoDB, and that means Clark authentication system and our own user database always stay perfect, right? So this is for new, like user created. If you look at similar for user update, right? So when so if type is user.update, then we are doing same things. We're grabbing data ID, and then we assign here, and also then we create update and then all the field. And here we are checking if we are not care about the undefined. So here we only care about the value. If is there undefined, just skip it. And then we are using find and update because this document method can update and create at once. So that's why we are passing this clerk ID, and also it accepts other field updates, and this is the option. This new always makes sure yeah, it create new one. And if the type is user delete, then run this block of code. So similarly, I grab the clerk ID, and then also I'm just looking for the user ID, users using clerk ID, and if user exists, then remove that cover image. But in our case, we don't have, but you can add on it, right? So yeah, I can just I can cover all the edge case, so you can use it, right? Or and inside try block, and then I'm just deleting that cover image from our database. And then also I have to update all the relationship, right? So here I have to remove all the relationship data. So inside user we have followers. So I'm just looking for that followers field, and they I pull them out, right? So and then also for following, similar action and post and also updates like save. So everything I just pull them out, right? And then I'm just here just upload post. What I did here, just also I'm just looking for all the upload by. So this is the user ID, and all the things I'm just assigned here. So first we have two nested loop. This is the for loop, and this is the upload post, and this is the post we just look through because it's an array, right? It's an array, so that's why we need a listed loop. So also, and then we have this field media, right? And this is a field media, and then we just delete that URL, right? And now post delete one. So right now, and then we delete the post, and then the user itself using clerk ID, right? If everything goes okay, then we respond this message. Otherwise, we wrap up it inside catch block, internet server error, right? So this is our user controllers, right? This is our user controller. So now it's time to define our endpoint. So right now I'm inside route folder, and then inside user route, right? So at the very top, we import express because we need it to create our router. And we also import Malta, which is a Node.js middleware used to handle file uploads, like when user upload profile picture, or so here when user post with files. All right. Next, we import all the function from our user.controller, right? The ones we just create earlier, right? And so and then two middleware. First one is require what from clerk, and also second one is verify clerk webhook. For it's also from clerk but for webhook. And also import our storage configuration from the config multi-storage. Don't worry, I'll explain this multi-storage configuration in details later because it's actually pretty important and handles how and where our uploaded file are stored. And now we create our router instance, right? And then we set up Malta. Here we set up Malta. Here we are passing two things to Malta. Storage which comes from our configuration file, and limits where we define how large file we are willing to accept. In this case, I have set it to 10 MB, but you can always increase it if you wanna allow bigger uploads, maybe for a high resolution image or other media. And then we start to define our endpoint, right? So first one is very simple, a get method to fetch all users, right? This is a router instance, and this is a get method, and this is the endpoint /all, and this is our controller. This route hits the all get all user controller function we talked about earlier. I'm not adding any middleware here because it's a public route, meaning anyone can view all the users. Next, we have the Clark webhook endpoint. This one's post route. Here's what's happening. We're using Express raw so that the body comes through in raw format. Clark requires this for webhook verification. The type is application/JSON. Then we pass in our verify Clark webhook middleware to check that the signature. Finally, we connect it to our handle Clark webhook controller. That's where the actual logic for creating or updating user runs. After that, let's move on to the current user endpoint. Alright, this one fetch data for the user who's currently logged in. And it is very simple. It's a get method /me require what and get current user, because it's not a public route, it's a private route, right? And finally, we have got a few more, we have got another route. So here I'm using put. You can use push, right? So yeah, the idea is simple. Toggle flow lets one user follow or unfollow another user by passing the target user ID. So if you look at, we are grabbing that ID from params. This is the ID, user ID. Yeah, this setup makes our router modular and clean. Each endpoint is clear about what it does, which controller it calls, and whether it needs authentication or not, right? And now we have to connect it. So this is our app, right? So just don't forget about other things, just care about one thing. So we import this user router from this file, right? And here just we are calling. This is our endpoint. This is the app.use API /users. This is our base URL, right? This is our base URL, and this is the user router, right? Don't worry, I'm going to explain to you everything. Just remember. So here just we are define, and this is our app, and this is the use built-in method, right? So yeah, this is for our user route. I hope you understand the logic, the controller, and then you understand how we define our route, right? So far, I hope that makes sense.